Hello, Rajshree. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good,
Hope
good,
all
good.
good with you too.
Yes, yes. A long time.
Long time. Long time.
Well,
Long time. I'm really excited for this session.
yes, yes. Today we are going to talk about Charulata. Yes, Charulata. Satyajit Ray is one of his most favorite films and almost a perfect film. I would give it a 10 on 10. In fact, that is 10 will be less out of 10. So let us start by talking about the opening sequence of Charulata a little bit in Mr. Ray's own words. I'll start with a answer which he gave to an interviewer, and then we'll start the conversation. Right?
Okay.
So the question goes like, there's a lot of obvious technique at the beginning of Charulata. So Mr. Ray answers, that is applied very consciously. And there is an element of fun in that first sequence. There is a playfulness about the character, the way she opens her shutters, peers through the glass from the drawer, and then there's a shot where the camera follows the glass through the banisters. Then at the end, it's playful. She sees the husband through the glass, but she's really quite close. And at the same time, far away. This contradiction of being physically close and yet emotionally far away. And then, of course, there's nothing she can do about it. So she brings the glass down with a gesture of, what can I do if he's far away? I can't bring him closer. This glass won't help. And then a zoom back, which closes the scene. It's a flourish which corresponds almost exactly with the flourish with a pen at the end of the story. And the question goes, like your signature? He says, yes. So it's a flourish, the zoom out. So this this beautiful scene, the first scene of the film Charulata, I think encapsulates cinema itself.
Hmm.
Like it
True.
gives us an understanding of cinema. The first 20 pages of the novel are captured so beautifully in the first 10 minutes of the film. And that can only happen in cinema through the shot taking, through the art design, through the costumes, and through the actions. Whatever she's doing, she's roaming around in the house, she has nothing to do, and she's following characters with her binoculars who are just passing by the streets. And off screen sound also plays a very important role in this
Yes.
scene where the characters are introduced first with the sound and then they are shown. I always show this scene to my students for sound as well. So,
Yeah.
so not just sound, but the entire scene plays out so beautifully. And I think it is one of the finest sequences in any kind of cinema, which establishes the premise of the film of the lonely wife, Charulata. And she is there in this huge house. And so I would request you, Rajshree, to just refresh the viewers with the story, with the premise of this beautiful film channel.
Well, it is one of my favorite films, and also it was, as you know, it was written by Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore. This book was The Lonely Wife. I feel a lot of it is from his own life. Tagore had taken his own life, and he had this relationship with his sister-in-law. People, I mean, that's what we know of. So I think this is somewhere his own very personal story to Tagore. So when Satyajit Ray took this story, it is a very late 19th century story, but of course,
1879. Yeah,
it's
1879.
late 19th century. So it's a late 19th century story. But what I still feel that it's a very relevant film. So let me tell you a little bit about the story.
Yes,
It's
yes.
about Charu. It's about this woman who's married to Bhupati, who is an upper class man. As you could call it, a bhadralok, an upper class Bengali man, very, very contained, very, very nice to his wife. But he never has time for his wife. He's got his prose printing press. Charu is introduced as this woman who's his wife, who's in this big palatial house, like a big house. She has everything in her, she's got everything that she wants, a writing table, she's got durbin, she's got everything, but she doesn't have the the time of her husband. So it's basically a lonely wife, as the title goes, and the lonely wife gets a. So now Bhupati, who is a Bhadralok, and he brings his brother and his sister-in-law Manda, Umapada and Manda. They are also staying with them. He brings them to kind of so that Charu is not lonely, because he can sense her loneliness somehow. But he kind of like, okay, you bring Umpada and Monda, but she's not happy with him. So she says, okay, let me get my nephew Amol. Amol is played by Soumitra Chatterjee. And when Amol comes into Charu's life, everything changes. Amol is her her companion. He shares her views in literature, her poetry companion. He understands her, and slowly, because she ends up spending, and they have the same thought process. They get along very well. They have the same kind of, they think alike. So this mutual attraction between them uh, makes Charu kind of start liking Amol. And Amol senses this love, realizes this Charu's love and attraction towards him. But being in that, in that place, and out of guilt, out of duty for his brother, his thing, he decides that he must leave, and he leaves Charu, and he goes off to London. Meanwhile, Bhupati gets conned by his brothers, and he's taken aback, and he doesn't know how to handle. He kind of opens up to Amol. Amol, on the other hand, feels very guilty about it, about the whole situation with him and Charu, and he suddenly takes up a job, and he goes off to London and decides to get married. And this is when Bhupati realizes that there is something more to Charu and Amol's friendship, and that his wife has now, has some kind of, has feelings for Amol. But and he's kind of shocked, and he's heartbroken when he realizes the truth about this. And he tries, and he sees, when he sees Charu crying, and when he sees Charu crying, he realizes that Charu is, he realizes the depth of feeling she has for Amal. You know what I mean? And that's when, I mean, the story, the film is so interesting, is that when he realizes, and he tries to attempt, and he tries to kind of put out his hand, and Charu is about to, catch his hand, and that's when the film ends. So we don't know whether Charu accepts or does not accept, but it's a beautiful way of keeping an open ending. So that's the basic story. It's about, and we've seen this story in myriad of films, and since even recently I've seen a film. I mean, we've seen these love triangles, and this kind of this, but but this film is a I would say 100 on 110 if I had to, not on 10 on 10. It's one of my top 10 films of all time. As a filmmaker, every time you watch it, you discover something new, I think. So I think that's what the story is. It's a simple story about a woman who's trying to kind of find her own space, and in finding her own self, she's trying to, because see, in those days she has nothing to do, and she's lonely, and she's got no time. But it's also she's trying, and in her, I also find it's like a coming of age in a way. She kind of finds herself in Amol, and she kind of comes out of her own cocoon. So to me, that is what the story basically today, how it stands for me. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
that's
I'll
what's basically.
I'll come back to the very interesting point which you made about coming of age. But just a couple of things on what you just said so beautifully. You told us the story of Charulata, and very very heartwarming way. Uh, uh, I think in the film they never show him going to London. They show him going somewhere else. I think Madras or something.
Okay.
In the film,
Oh,
maybe
is
it's a,
it?
yes,
It's in the book.
maybe in the novel.
It's
Yeah,
a.
maybe I
Yeah,
have.
he goes off to
Yes,
London.
yes, yes.
Yeah, so maybe
We'll
that's the
talk
thing.
about the adaptation part
Ah,
also a bit later.
yeah.
There is a
Huh.
freeze frame and there's an open kind of ending. So I was just reading Ray Saab's interviews, where in one of the he says that he did that I think to because he is they need more time to come
Hmm.
back together. So maybe
Yes, I
eventually they
agree.
will come back together, but still,
Hmm.
it cannot happen all of a sudden. He was trying to say
Yeah,
something, and she
yeah.
extends her hand, and he also extends it, but Ray doesn't show them clasping their
Yeah,
hands together because
which is real.
in reality, these things it's not so
True,
fast. It doesn't have.
true,
So yeah, these were
true.
the couple of points which I wanted to add to your rendition of the story. And now, very interesting, and which you have told me over the phone as well, the coming of age part, and you had mentioned this is one of the most feminist films uh,
Yes.
ever made.
I
So
won't say it's a feminist film.
yeah. Hmm.
It's a very interesting. And today the word feminist, Mr. John, I know a lot of words are being used. Patriarchy. I would say it's a very balanced film. It's not from a men's point of view or a woman's point of view. It's not through men's gaze or a woman's gaze. I think it's a very, very balanced film. It's written by a man, and it's directed by a man, but it is very well, portrays a woman's uh, gaze, of herself. If you see the movie, if you see the opening sequence, she's sitting there, she's, embroidery, then she takes out the glass which you meant is her own thoughts. So we, for the first time, we see her thoughts. We've always seen through a man's gaze what a woman feels, but what if we want to see a woman's gaze? So for me, it being, I mean, I don't know if it's a feminist film or it's a, but I think it's more modern than many films, feminist films so called, that we see today. I think it's more of um, a woman's perspective of what a woman feels when she's lonely, what she is going through. I mean, it is through her eyes, through her feelings. We don't see what Bhupati or Amol is seeing. We see what she's seeing of them. We see her thoughts, and I think that's what I think that the greatest thing about this film is that that's what is the most beautiful thing about this film. It's through Charu's thoughts that we get, through Charu's binoculars or through Charu's close-ups, that when we go into Charu's close-ups, you see what she's thinking when she looks, and there's no, it's not like we see Amor looking at her at a certain areas or looking at, but it is she who's doing that. It's always she's seeing Amol, that she's seeing him doing these things. I think it's fantastic. I mean, how many of us have done that in any of the films? We always are looking through a man's gaze at a woman, or through something. Why can't we, or a woman through a woman? Why can't we see a balanced perspective? And I think that's what this film is about, and that's why it stands out from the rest, because it never really tries to tell you, oh, this is what it is and this is how it should be. No, this is what an equality is. This is what she's feeling, and this is what she wants. And it is very, very beautifully portrayed in various sequences. When she's on the swing, if you remember the scene with the swing, it says so much more. I mean, the camera is her expressions and her feelings about the freedom. It's not like he's looking at her, but it's her joys. I think that's what made this film stand out to me. And I feel, as a feminist, I mean, Tagore himself was very, very progressive, you know um, writer. He always he wrote about these progressive women in Bengal. And when Satyajit Ray was directing this film, at that time there were a lot of women, progressive women. He was trying to portray a very equal society. So he also he kept that in mind when he was doing it. He gave her the character, Charu, the character, to kind of explore her, um, her her mind, what she's seeing. So I think that's very, very interesting in this film, and that's one of the most captivating things about this film. So for me, it is not, I would not say it's a feminist film per se, but it is more than a feminist film. It's an equality film. It's a film that shows you a woman's gaze through her own mind of what she's going through. You don't need another perspective. I can show you. And I think as a director, I think that's a fantastic way. And I also like the way you said sound played a very important part to go into her head, or to even give you a sense of her loneliness or her world. If you remember those sounds that are coming from an outside world, her world is silent. So I think that's a lot of perspectives that we've forgotten in filmmaking. And we rely, I think that's what makes Charulata what it is in the feminist context, if there is a feminist context, that is. And I also feel it's a very, very progressive film. Now, the woman has a say. The husband gives her. He walks away. He says, And I was just thinking when I was watching and I was doing research before I was coming up to have this conversation with you. I watched the movie and I was doing some research. And recently we have seen some movies that have come this way, almost similar, and I somehow feel they have missed what Tagore was trying to say. Women are progressive, but you have to give relationships their respect for each other. Bhupati, as a man, walks away from his wife, but he realizes that she loves another man. He says, "Why not?" I think in a way, somewhere he questions it. If I was a woman, what would if I was a man? If I had fallen in love, would she forgive me? Yeah. So same thing. He comes back and he extends his hand, and it is up to her. He gives her the permission to either accept him or not to accept him. He gives her the choice. How many people do that? It's her choice to be with you. So I think that's a very, very progressive and very, very equal kind of a relationship that he's tried to portray. And I think that's what makes it relevant even today.
Yes. And this was made in what, 1964, I think?
64.
So it's been how many years now? 36,
I think
56 years. And still it's as fresh as ever. He says, "I'm going to write a column in your paper."
Yeah.
And then he says that in a political paper, how can you write? He said, "No, there'll be different sections. And I will manage one section and you manage another section." So there you go. That is, progressiveness. And this film was based in 1879. So a woman at that time saying that I'm going to run the press, and so it's still relevant. It's still relevant.
So this story was written in 1901, so beginning of the century, 1901, and it's called Nosto-Nirh. What you had said, the first half is about in cinema time, it's about say 5-10 minutes.
The first sequence, 10 minutes.
The first 10 minutes, and the book is 20 pages. 20 pages. The script is about, even if you take a 20-page script, 20 pages of the book, it's about, say in a script, it will be at least say 30 pages or 20 pages,
30
at
minutes,
least in script. Yeah. So imagine putting that, and almost with only sound and few
no dialogues.
No dialogues,
hardly any music.
Exactly. And imagine portraying that 20 pages of that novella in a cinema, and in this, and you get it right away. You know what the hell is going on and where we are, and the characters are established. What is her world? What she's feeling? It's all there. I think that says a lot in about
cinema.
About cinema and the director.
How we can use cinema.
Filmmaker. Exactly, how we can use the medium of images and sound and putting them. I mean, Satyajit Ray is, of course, Satyajit Ray, but he took that, and that is what the the
It's a class in filmmaking.
Exactly, it's a master stroke. Like, I mean, we are all struggling. We are, today everybody wants to do, web series based on books or literature or whatever it is. But they forget that it is, and then we are all struggling how to put those pages in, in those things, and you're missing out, and you're cutting, and people are not happy. But you have to find a way. The most important, the crux of the story has to come out, and that has to come out without the dialogue. How is that possible? But that is what writing and adapting is. Cinema is not, when you're reading, I also feel, of course, it's we've read about Ray, how he sketched his, and he already had his way of, he did his own storyboard. He knew exactly where he would put his camera and how he's going to edit the film. It's all there. It's in his head. So I feel like he was very, very meticulous. He had read the material. He knew how he wanted to bring forth, I would say, the theme of this character without saying much, because loneliness is not about words, it's actually about silence. And he used that in the context of this first sequence. I mean, he's telling you that she has no words in her life, she has nobody to speak to, she is lonely, and that is was there's 10 minutes of the, of course, and the Rabindranath could write it in words, and he could describe her feeling. This man had no time. He had 2 hours to make the, those so many pages, so he had to do it right away. I think it's a genius the way he has gone about and putting together. So for me, it is very important, the adaptation is not easy, but Ray always adapted. Most of his movies are adapted work, and that's what makes me also, as a director, as a filmmaker, I feel, when you can imagine a book, when you read a book and you can say, okay, I can bring it up to 2 hours and keep the essence of the book, then you've got it. Otherwise, it's no point, because most of the people who've read the book will hate you because you've not adapted well. But if you get the essence right and you have got the heart of the book, then you've got it right. And I think most of Ray's work was that.
Yes, just to summarize and maybe add a point on adaptation for cinema, as Mr. Ray himself has said many a times, that when you adapt for cinema, then cinema is a different medium from the book. So you have to adapt it accordingly for cinema. And you can make the slight changes. It doesn't have to be. I think
that's what makes it interesting. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what, I mean, imagine he's putting you into the world and he's giving you sound. And he's telling you there is this, she's sitting on the thing and embroidering, and she's getting in a way, and then there's these various cuts, that is, that zooming thing, and then you're watching all these things, and then she's, and you hear the sound of the various people, and okay, this is, she can, and imagine she's looking through this glass, and he's far and she's near, and then she's near and far. I mean, it automatically shows you the relationship of the two people, right? I mean, how can you? It's so, in 1 second, I knew what the relationship of these two people are. Are they close? Are they not close? I mean, it's very adaptation is not. It's tough, but if you get it right, then you've got it all. I think it's just how you have to take it away from the literature. You have to take it away from the book and just say how I will bring that book into cinema. So I think that's what Ray is a genius in that. And in all his films, whatever he's done, most of it, even Potted Pachali, if you see, it's also a book. So each story that he has taken has somehow he's made it his own. So it's away from the context of the short story. It's a entity of its own. And when they're two entities. I mean, today we are talking about Rabindranath, but we are actually talking about Charulata. We are not talking about the Broken Nest, So it's a two different entity. So I think that's what is a genius filmmaker.
And I think when the film came out, and then a lot of critics and purists said that, oh my God, how can you change this and how can you change that? Then Mr. Ray had to write a letter refuting each and every point and why he changed this and why he changed that, and he has to explain in cinematic terms, and that is also a good lesson, that how cinema is different from the novel. In fact, Ray has
I
answered
think
all his
that
critics.
I think that those were the earlier days. But today, critics understand because a lot of we have seen a lot of adaptations and many of films, and we are now used to that. But still, I think as a reader as well as a avid watcher, I sometimes I also have a problem with when adaptations are not done right. Because when you read, you have your own. You've gone into that imagination. You've made your world. So when a director takes that and makes it his or hers, then you kind of have to you have to keep it away from the book, because unless you don't keep it away, it will always of course there are I would say there are exceptions. I mean, Godfather is one, and I think even as we're talking about Charlotte as one, I think these are exceptions, which has taken the book to another level, as in the cinematic form. So I think it depends.
And Ray, I was reading his interviews, as I told you, and he said once he reads the book, then he reads it several times, and then he forgets it. He keeps it aside, and then
Yes.
he doesn't, just look at what is there, and then he just leaves it, and then he starts writing. And of course, the dialogues in Pother Panchali he took from the novel, because at that time he was not very confident about his own dialogue writing. So maybe he was confident, but the dialogues were so good in Pother Panchali, in Vibhuti Bhushan's work, that he took it. And uh, coming to dialogue, Ray always felt that dialogue should be lifelike. It should not be something, some rosy language. It has to be
Oof.
lifelike. It has to be what people
Colloquial.
speak, talk.
Yes, I think that's what, and I think when I think that's see he's a master. That's why we call him the master, because if you see his film and you understand where he's coming from, it's exactly what I also feel like. When you see his film and you say, okay, this is how I must do my films, because that's what we learn as filmmakers. We say, okay, this is how we want to do, because if you do, what is your audience? Your audience is today. So if you can't relate to them with the language of today, you cannot relate. It's not a play, it's cinema. Cinema is a depicting of almost life. Today we are shooting on iPhone. So imagine if you have the language of some earlier thing, people won't, people won't relate to you. So
It, it
I think that's what he was trying to do, and that's what makes him. That's why I said it's even relatable. It's because it's so colloquial and it's so everyday language that today also when I'm watching Charulata, I can understand it. Didn't feel like it's an old film to me, or it's like made in 60s. It felt like, okay, I could watch this film like I could have been made a year ago, because its language is so seeped in today's everyday language. I think the whole if you see the whole film, everywhere, um, it's very, even though it's a period film, it does not have that period feel to it.
since you talk about that scene again, second time, so let just about the mise scene of that scene, the swing. There are just 3 points of view. One, she's swinging this way, and the camera is here, right here. What
Yeah,
we
yeah,
see
yeah.
in today's films, that they did attach the camera to the body and the actor is walking. What we have seen recently, it was done in 1964. The camera is right here, and she's
Exactly.
swinging, and the camera is swinging with her. I don't know how they did that. And then there is her point of view, and he's lying on the ground, and the camera is
Exactly.
going like this, and she's not in the frame, and it's exactly her point of view. And with again, this kind of shot is again in that songs Ami Chini Go Chini, when it's
Yes.
Amal's point of view and he's tiptoeing.
I felt they were all juxtaposed for her little cage. So I thought it's so well done,
Yeah.
so well put together. I think the production designer, the cinematographer, the director, they all kind of were in sync of how they would do the shot and how they would take it. I don't know. I think it is one of the most um, cinematic geniuses, I think.
See, there was no
To me.
production designer. It was a one-man show. So, of course, there is the art director.
So it is Mr. Ray all the way.
It is the
Yeah.
art director and the costume. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the
The
art design and the
costumes are
costumes.